Talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Little Wednesday morning edition. Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is having a great Wednesday wherever you are watching this show. We have listeners all over the globe. Darren in Australia. We got listeners in Kentucky and Tennessee, Vegas. Shout out to all of our Vegas listeners. I'll tell you what, as you can see, I am in a mysterious East Coast hotel room because I was flying last night, but guess what? We still got ourselves a jam-packed, loaded, awesome episode of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, and we're going to do something we haven't done in a while. We're talking all hoops. We haven't done an all hoops show in a while, but I just thought this was a nice midweek show. I know there's been a lot of football. We're certainly going to get back to it tomorrow when I'm at the Mint, and obviously next week as we ramp up for the college football playoff. Okay, but all college hoops will be quick. It'll be a fun, quick, efficient show. BYU, Rob Wright at the buzzer, baby. We'll be talking about him from there. And by the way, AJ Dybantsa and everything that happened at Madison Square Garden. We will also be talking about another signature win for UConn. I don't even think UConn's playing that well right now, and they are taking care of business, putting together one of the best resumes in college basketball. And then from there, we will quickly hit on the rest of a busy Tuesday night. Michigan, they just may never lose ever. As a matter of fact, they may never win by less than like 25. We'll talk about them. We'll talk about Lamar Wilkerson at Indiana. And Mark Pope with the little Dikembe Mutombo saying no to Brandon Garrison. We got a lot to get into here in a short amount of time. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. One, make sure you're subscribed to Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. New clips, new videos going up every single day. Really do appreciate your support as we approach 70,000 subscribers. Again, still mostly college football to get us into January, but some college basketball as well. Also, make sure that you're subscribed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Really quickly before we get started, also want to thank our friends, our hotel and casino partners, Circa Sportsbook and the Circa Casino. Okay, so bottom line is, listen, I am going to be tomorrow, if all things go well, at the Mint, which is the brand new Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky, okay? So first of all, shout out Circa in Vegas. As we said, a lot of awesome listeners in the Vegas area. But listen, Circa is our home when we're in Vegas. We've done a bunch of shows from there, from Stadium Swim, and it's the best place anywhere to watch games when you're in Vegas. Stadium Swim is unbelievable, biggest sports book in the world. But we also know that you can't easily get out to Vegas maybe from the East Coast. So that is why Circa has opened up the brand new Circa Sportsbook, Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky, about hour and a half from Nashville, about an hour and a half from Louisville, 45 minutes from Nashville. Beautiful new facility. I plan on being there tomorrow. And oh, by the way, as we get ready for March Madness, I promise you we'll be doing some shows from the Mint as well. So thank you to everybody for listening. And thank you to our hotel and casino partner, Circa Sportsbook at Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky. With that said, it is a busy Wednesday morning in sports. There is no more time to waste. So, folks, let's get to it. Let's get to the topic of the day. Topic of the day, like I said, so I was on a plane. I am traveling. Again, we know, there's so much college football going on, but I really wanted to focus on basketball today. And I'll tell you what, BYU Clemson was not only a thriller, it was a thriller from about 30,000 feet, 15,000 feet, and 5,000 feet for your boy Torres. Okay, so again, I was on a plane coming to the East Coast, but the cool part was I was able to largely catch most of this game, okay? So I get on the plane, I turn on the Wi-Fi, and it's kind of funny, right? Because I turn it on, I think BYU is down by maybe 8 or 10 late in the first half. I flip over to the Kentucky game really quick. By the way, shout out Southwest. I had all the sports channels on that flight. But I bring it up because I flip over, then I turn back. BYU is down 20. It's halftime, And I sat there and said, maybe this is just one of those moments where BYU, they fly east. I think they got in early, maybe on early Sunday. Maybe they just weren't ready, and you kind of pack it in and you say, whatever, you get ready for the next game, get ready for Big 12 play. I know, because BYU trailed by 22 points 21 at the half, 22 in the second half, slowly chip away. This was both the fun part and not fun part about being on a plane. Captain literally says, you got to turn off all your portable devices, right? Torres says, no. I'm watching the end of this Clemson BYU game. Clemson, by the way, BYU is down 22. They come all the way to take a 5-point lead. Clemson comes back and ties it. You have 2 Clemson timeouts. Then BYU inbounds the ball, calls a timeout at half court. At this point, I'm going through turbulence. I'm at about 10,000 feet. We're about to land. But you want to talk about turbulence? How about Rob Wright at the buzzer? If you're watching on YouTube, we cannot play video by legality, but we can play you the sound. Here is Dan Schulman, Jay Billis on the call.
Bostovich to inbound. Right. Got it! Robert Wright III wins it for the Cougars. Don't know if that's what Kevin Young drew up, but it worked like a charm for BYU.
Well, it was clearly one of the options that Kevin Young drew up, because Robert Wright III was...
There you have it. Rob Wright at the buzzer calls game. BYU overcoming a 22-point second half deficit for the win. All right, so this game, it was so crazy that so to me, there's like 3 different stories in one. There's the buzzer beater. There's the fact that BYU trailed by 22 points in that second half, and they came back and won in regulation, mind you. And 3, listen, the big story that everybody wants to talk about, it is AJ Dybantsa. It is what he did in this game, on this stage, in this moment. The kid was absolutely incredible, okay? And I think everybody has some understanding of who he is, what he does, what makes him special. I thought on Tuesday night, though, at Madison Square Garden, the full display of skill, the full skill set, I guess would be the right way to say it, was on display, okay? First of all, kid finishes with 28 points overall, okay? Came into the game averaging 19 and change, whatever. 28 points overall, 23 of them, I believe, were in the second half. But what was crazy is, and I keep coming back to this with AJ, is, I think there was a lot of negativity. Listen, number 1 overall pick, whatever, debate, discuss, whatever. But I do think, in basketball circles, there was conversation about, is he a one-man band? Can he play within a team concept? All that good stuff. He transparently, didn't have a great senior season in some regards at Utah Prep. But I bring it up because look at what he did on Tuesday night. Finished the game overall with 28 points, 9 of 17 from the field. So he's not forcing the ball at all. 9 of 10 from the foul line. This is what I keep coming back to with AJ, which is unbelievable to me, is the fact that this is a kid who, can get to the rim anytime he wants at any moment. It's just an incredible skill set that I just don't know how many people have. 9 of 10 shooting from the from the free throw line. And I think that's what makes him so dangerous offensively. He can literally get to the line anytime he wants, and he's shooting 80%. And then, oh, by the way, on top of it, he also finished the game with 6 assists. And the stat that Jeff Borzello put out, Matt, you can pop that up whenever you want. Jeff Borzello put out a crazy stat. In the second half for AJ Dybantsa, he had more points, Matt, pop back up, more points and more assists than Clemson in the second half. 22 points compared to Clemson's 21, 5 assists compared to 3 assists for Clemson. And he was 7-4-11 from the field. Clemson was 7 of 27 overall. So 1, AJ was incredible. 2, statistically, he was phenomenal. But 3, that last part to me is so interesting, right? Because yes, it is a point total, 22 to 21. Shooting, Clemson finishes 7 of 27. And so I think 2 things can be true. I don't think BYU was great early. I certainly think they were great late. But why I bring it up and what is especially interesting to me is this. We can focus on AJ going off for 28. We can focus on Rob Wright at the buzzer. You know why BYU won that game? It was because they were truly locked down defensively in the second half, okay? And so with this game, I think we saw the full complement of essentially what BYU can be, but you go back to Kevin Young in the preseason at the Villanova game. I remember him talking about this at the Villanova game, was like, he basically said, like, I think we can be, and I think we should be the best defensive team in all of college basketball by the end of the season, and it starts with AJ Dybantsa. And so to me, that's the other thing that was on display with AJ, is the full defensive skill set and the ability to guard multiple positions and how he fits with Keba Keita, with, why am I blanking on his name? Kennard Davis, all of those guys. I mean, this is what BYU is supposed to be. And the crazy part is, not only do I not think they played their best game on Tuesday night, I think you can argue they have maybe once all season played their best game, period. It's kind of funny. I was thinking about this, is that you go through BYU right now. They're sitting at 8-1 overall. They have 4 bye games before Big 12 play starts, okay? And so I bring that up because they're sitting at 8-1. They have a win over Miami, which I'm not a huge Ken Palm guy, but they're a top 25 Ken Palm team. They have a win over Clemson. The only loss was to UConn on a neutral court. They've beaten Dayton. The only game where they played anything close to their full potential was against Wisconsin a few weeks ago. It was like a 2 p.m. local time start. It was on Peacock. I don't know how many people watch. That was the only game that they have played. And so, Matt, if I sent you my tweet from earlier today, this is the thing that stood out to me watching this game. BYU wins this unbelievable game, 21-point deficit. They're 8-1. They're probably going to enter Big 12 play 12-1. Their final 4 before Big 12 play are all bye games. Let's see here really quick off the top of my head. UC Riverside, Pacific, Abilene Christian, and Eastern Washington before they open at Kansas State and Arizona State in Big 12 play. By the way, I'm looking at the opening of the Big 12 play at Kansas State, Arizona State, at Utah, TCU. You never take anything for granted. They could start easily 4-0 in Big 12 play going into the middle of January where they go to Texas Tech. I mean, you could be looking at this team at 16-1 overall, and I don't think they've played anything close to their best basketball. You go back to Tuesday night, fell down by 21 points, 22 points, 21 points. I keep saying it, 21 points at the half, 22 points overall. And even in the comeback, go ahead and think about this game. Richie Saunders, who was an All-American last year, essentially, all Big 12 first team, 5 points in this game. He's averaging 17 on the season. Now, he struggled in the win against Villanova early. He has bounced back very nicely, is averaging 17 a game, 37% shooting from the 3. He had 5 points in this game. And so if I'm a BYU fan, I'm over the moon because I'm 8-1. The only loss was to UConn on a neutral in Boston. And a game that you lost by 2, you easily could have come back and won. And you should be 12-1 going into Big 12 play. Easily could be 16-1, again, with the way the schedule breaks to start Big 12 play. You should be over the moon. Listen, Big 12 is brutal. I don't know what else there is to say about that. Arizona is great. Iowa State is great. Houston is very good and will be great by the middle of Big 12 play. Kansas, I think now that they're at full strength, is very good. But I just bring it up because, like, if you're a BYU fan, I just think you have to be over the moon at where your team is and really where they could be. Because remember last year, they actually really struggled out of the gate. Like, it's easy to forget now BYU makes the Sweet 16. It's this great story. New head coach, comes in, this and that. But let's never forget, they basically, they entered Big 12 play at 10-2, but didn't really play a very tough out of conference schedule. And then at one point, don't forget that they were 11-6 overall before they got hot late in the season. And so I could go on and on, 11-6, 15-8 overall a season ago. I just bring it up to very simply say that this team is ahead of where last year's team was. This team is not even playing that well and is 8-1, should be 12-1 heading into Big 12 play. And oh, by the way, their best basketball is still ahead. Clemson, by the way, I'd be lying if I said I had a ton of takes on Clemson. Clemson to me is almost like Iowa football. It's just like every single year they're kind of good. You don't really want to pay that close attention. They're not really a fun watch, but they're tough. They're competitive. Last 2 games, 3-point loss to BYU at the buzzer, 6-point loss at Alabama. So they are certainly good and certainly another team that's going to be in the tournament mix. The thing with Clemson that's different this year, the ACC is just so much better at the top. Remember last year, the ACC had Duke, Louisville, Clemson, and UNC, I believe, were the only teams from the ACC in the NCAA tournament. This year, it's much, much tougher, but I give Clemson credit. This is a good BYU team. That was a good Alabama team they just lost to, but Clemson's playing really good basketball. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take a quick break, come back. I don't know if there's any questions or comments in the chat. We'll get to those. Then from there, do want to talk about the UConn Huskies midnight, late night game at Madison Square Garden. Talk about them. Talk about the rest of a busy Tuesday night in college hoops. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, I have so many people that reach out and say, Torres, you give me hours and hours and hours of free content every day, every month, every year. What can I do to help support the show? Well, you want to support the show and look good in the process. Make sure to check out and support the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Some of you wondering, what can I get in that merch store, Torres? Well, Kentucky fans, we got our Mark Pope Hope and Pope t-shirts. That is right. Mark Pope, monster first year. Year 2 is going to be even better. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirt at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is coming. It is here. John Calipari has things rocking. Get your Big Pig Invasion tees. Again, aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. St. John's fans, we have our Big Rick Energy t-shirts. And if you're just a college basketball fan in general, guess what? Your March is for Day Drinking shirt. That is the shirt that you need year-round, but especially for the next NCAA tournament. You can order yours now. By the way, football fans, we got you covered too. Nebraska fans, new era, new rules, the t-shirt that you need before the start of this coming season. And oh, by the way, if you're a Colorado fan, if you're just a Coach Prime fan, we have our Dion shirts and hats, more of them than we know what to do with. So to check out the full line of Aaron Torres Media merch and also support the show, good news is we're going to have even more for the fall. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And for more information, you can always reach out at Aaron Torres Podcast Questions @gmail.com. All right, everybody. I'm back. Going to be back. Going to get to UConn, Florida in a second. Matt, I think you said there's something interesting in the chat. K. Bakeda broke the hoop. So I almost missed the end because K. Bakeda broke the hoop. So fun fact, the internet Wi-Fi went out on the plane midway through, probably some of the turbulence. And the score stayed the same. And I was like, did the computer freeze? What the heck happened? Yeah, K. Bakeda just broke a freaking basket, okay? K. Bakeda, everybody knows he's a Torres guy. BYU's really good, man. They're really good, and they haven't even come close to playing their best basketball. Should be excited if you're a BYU fan. By the way, BYU fans, a lot of upcoming games in the Delta Center and, of course, in the Marriott Center. Guess what? You know what you're going to need? Tickets. Go ahead and use the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek is America's #1 ticketing app. Over 28 million downloads. I keep telling you, I love SeatGeek for 2 reasons. One, first of all, what I love about SeatGeek is that they rate every ticket 1 through 10 with a green dot or a red dot. Green dot means go ahead and purchase. Red dot means maybe you want to stay away. But what I really love about SeatGeek is this. They take care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. If you go to SeatGeek.com or download the SeatGeek app, if you use promo code Torres, get you $20 off your first purchase. Promo code Torres gets you $20 off your first purchase at SeatGeek. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres. By the way, not just sporting events. Can be shows, concerts, this, that, the other thing. SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres gets you $20 off. I think I mentioned it the other day. A buddy of mine buying tickets to the Backstreet Boys at the Sphere can use SeatGeek.com, promo code Torres to get you $20 off your first purchase. All right, let's keep going. Let's get to the night game. And by the way, one quick thing. Luke says it all. Get SeatGeek and Cauley Puffs. CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres. We'll get to them in a second as well. All right. Let's go ahead and get to the nightcap. Nightcap. All right. So BYU, the game goes on forever because, as Minty pointed out, Cape Decatur broke a basket. Then there was a bunch of timeouts. Then things went crazy. Then I landed. And I'll be honest. So let's go ahead and talk UConn in Florida. And like I said, was on a plane, saw the end of the BYU game. I land, do the whole thing, get to the airport, go to the hotel, check in, get to the hotel bar. The UConn Florida game is on, which is great. The counter to it is I look at the score and I'm like, oh, Florida's up 20-18 in this game. And it's kind of crazy, right? Because listen, I'll own it. I said it on yesterday's show. I said, if Terrace Reed plays for UConn, UConn's going pure BTA, belt to ass. It's going to get ugly. Well, Terrace Reed did play, and it did not get ugly. And so the final score in this game, so again, I get to the hotel bar. UConn's down, I want to say maybe 20-18. They proceed, by the way, to make 9 straight field goals. They have a 6-7 point lead going into the second half. They end up winning the game. Final score at Madison Square Garden, Store South, 77-73. There was no thrilling end like BYU Clemson, but I think there were big takeaways for both. So let's go ahead and start with the UConn Huskies in a matchup, by the way. I think everybody knows this, but a matchup of the last 3 national champions. UConn won in 23 and 24. Florida won in 25. And UConn has the upper hand in the game against Florida. What's crazy about UConn? So with UConn, first of all, I was thinking about this, right? I don't want to go all existential, quoting Socrates. I'm a simple guy, right? But at the same time, I did think of that old quote with UConn, or not with UConn, but what was it? Was it Kipling? He said, the strength of the wolf is the pack, and the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. That's the UConn Huskies this year, right? Because you look at this game, right? So you come off last week, you go to Fog Allen, you have this unbelievable win. You beat Kansas at Kansas. Everybody's riding high. Braylon Mullins, the true freshman, is unbelievable in his second career game, first career road game. And you're like, oh, that's just who this team is now. Braylon Mullins is the guy. He's going to get buckets. Terrace Reed is coming back. They're unbeatable. Well, guess what? Braylon Mullins is in foul trouble the whole game during this game. And guess what ends up happening? Other guys step up. One solo ball, he struggled early out of the gate. Not so much of an issue last night, and really the last couple weeks he's gotten going. 19 points in this game, couple 3-pointers made. He is playing like the preseason All Big East first team guy that I think we all thought he was going to be. The other guy that I knew was good, but he is quickly becoming a fan favorite of UConn. And frankly, he's just what UConn didn't have last year, right? So you go back to last year with UConn. Hassan Diarra for 2 years had been Tristan Newton's backup. Tristan Newton's unbelievable. He goes pro. And UConn doesn't, Hassan Diarra is not really a starting point guard, but he has to be. But you have Aiden Mahaney, and it's weird, right? Well, I bring it up because what UConn did not have last year was the energy guy off the bench that elevated everybody. And that's exactly who Malachi Smith is, okay? And Billis and Shulman, to their credit, talked about this a lot during the game. But Malachi Smith off the bench, 5 points, 9 assists. By the way, Jeff Borzello, the star of the show, because I saw this morning, this is an incredible stat. So UConn has played 5 ranked opponents this year, okay? So 5 teams that were ranked at the time they played them. Let's see if I can do it off the top of my head. At Kansas, Illinois, BYU, Arizona, and also on Tuesday night against Florida. In the 5 games against ranked opponents, Malachi Smith, according to Jeff Borzello, shout out to him, 31 points, 5 assists. Not great at math, but correct me if I'm wrong. Or 31, what did I say? Did I say 31 points, 5 assists? I'd take that back. 31 assists and 5 turnovers, okay? Not great at math. That's a 6-to-1 assist-to-turnover ratio against really good teams, and he was the X factor making all of the big plays on Tuesday night for the Huskies at Madison Square Garden. And so you look at the fact that, again, Braylon Mullins didn't play well. You look at the fact that Solo Ball did, Malachi Smith stepping up, credit where it's due. Alex Caravan, for people who don't remember the UConn stuff day to day, last year Alex Caravan took some unwarranted heat, missed some late free throws in a big game against Villanova, never really recovered from that. Well, I bring it up because he's been Mr. Consistency for UConn. 13 points in this game. This, of course, after 11 at Fog Allen, 12 against Illinois the game before. Every single game he delivers. And for a guy that struggled so much last year, it's unbelievable to see him bounce back, him step up, him have the success that he's having, and frankly, just be the veteran guy that UConn needs. What's scary about UConn, and Matt, why don't you just pop up the Torres on UConn account right now, because tweeted this out on Wednesday morning after the game. So UConn just beat Florida, and we're going to talk about Florida in a minute. Good team. Don't think they're elite. Another conversation. They beat Florida in a game in which Silas Demery, the starting point guard who everybody is waiting on, he hasn't quite figured it out yet, and that's okay. I still believe he's going to. It took Tristan Newton probably about 75% of his first year to figure it out. He was an, Final Four MVP, most outstanding player in his second year. I think Silas Demery is going to figure it out, but he had 5 points. Braylon Mullins played 11 minutes total because he was in foul trouble. And Terrace Reed, who before his injury in the first 2-3 games of the year was averaging about 20 and 12, finished the game with, let me see here. I had the stats right there and I lost them. I think he finished with about 12 and 5. He did finish with 12 and 5. And so you're essentially getting about 60% of what you think you're going to be able to get once you get Terrace Reed fully healthy. And so to me, that's the scary part about this UConn team. And I'll tell you this, it reminds me of the 2024 title team. Okay, so the 2024 title team, there was the 23 title team where they started really hot, struggled in Big East play, came back, got hot at the end of the year. But they didn't struggle at Big East play. UConn fans will get mad at me. They had about a 6-game stretch. I think they went 1-5, whatever. 2024, if you remember, that was the year they brought back Donovan Clingan, Newton, who we've talked about a few times, all those guys, add Cam Spencer. They were really good in the out-of-conference play, but Clingan got hurt, mid to late December. He misses a month. And it wasn't until mid to late January that you got your full team back. And then it was probably another 2 or 3 weeks before you really hit your groove. And UConn wasn't even playing its best basketball till mid-February. And then once February hit, boom, it's game over, lights out. Like nobody was beating UConn that year. This team, I'm not saying no one's going to beat UConn because Arizona already has. Michigan's really good. Purdue, Iowa State, whatever. This team reminds me of that, though. I don't think we're seeing anything close to the best version of UConn. I don't know if we're going to see anything close to the best version of UConn for another month. And yet, despite all of that, UConn is now 9-1. I know they have the loss to Arizona. You can't say the resume is better than Arizona's, who has obviously beaten Florida, beaten UCLA on a neutral, beaten UConn at UConn, Auburn over the weekend. But look at UConn's resume right now. Look at UConn's resume. As Jeff Borzello said, they played 5 ranked teams. They have Texas coming to town on Friday, okay? They are currently 9-1. Win over BYU is going to hold up well all year. Win at Kansas is certainly going to hold up well all year. Same with neutral court wins against Illinois and Florida. And so I bring it up because UConn is now sitting at 9-1. I would expect them to win their final out-of-conference game against Texas this week. And I'll say this, they're going to go into the Big East at 10-1, and I know it's conference play, and I know it's tough, and it's road venues, and it's teams that know you. If you've been watching college basketball this year, the Big East isn't really that good. And so all of a sudden, I don't think it's out of play that one, first of all, it's important to note, UConn kind of needed to do this in the out-of-conference because the league isn't going to give them a lot of great opportunities. So this is really big. Still can't let up against Texas. But I only bring it up because at the same time, let's also remember this. If the Big East is down, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say if they enter Big East play at 10-1, I don't think it's hyperbolic to say they could go 17-3, 16-4, maybe 18-2. Now you're talking about a number 1 seed, but it had to happen with these out-of-conference games. So this is almost a best-case scenario for UConn. You're winning these games, and you're not even playing close to the best of your ability. I think if you're Dan Hurley, listen, I don't know what he's actually thinking right now, but I could tell. I've watched all his press conferences. He seems very comfortable with where this team is and where they're going. Now, he did say we got to have a great performance and a great crowd against Texas on Friday night. That has to be the best crowd ever, because that is a game that you cannot drop. Texas is good. They're not great in year one under Sean Miller. And I'll say this, Sean Miller is a heck of a coach, and Sean Miller was in the Big East. He knows UConn. You don't show up ready to play, they'll take you down. I think UConn wins. I think they enter Big East play at 11-1 overall. And I'm telling you, man, I think they can really do amazing things, and I think they're trending towards a number one seed. I know it's early to talk stuff like this, but again, you look at all the chess pieces across college basketball. You look at, again, the fact that the league is a little bit down. It might be a 3-4 bid league. I'm just saying there's going to be a lot of wins there. You had to get these wins in the out-of-conference, and you got them. UConn improves to 9-1 overall. Very quickly with Florida, listen, I don't want to be like super negative. And what I also don't want to do, I don't want to do the whole confirmation bias thing with Florida, because what Florida is kind of what Florida is, what I told you they were going to be in the spring and in the summer and in the fall. And I go back to when Florida's roster came together, Boogie Flan withdraws from the draft. This was late May, early June. And the roster comes together, and I said, okay, I like Florida. I don't love them. And then all of a sudden, it was just this consensus in college basketball of like, there's a clear top three. It's Houston, Purdue, and Florida. I'm like, what? Oh, what? Like, I like Florida. I don't love Florida. I don't think they're that kind of team. Now, listen, I've gotten some stuff wrong, but I thought Michigan was better than them. I thought Louisville was better than them. I thought Arkansas was better than them. And there's a lot of teams that I thought were better than them. And so what we're seeing is exactly what I told you was going to happen. And I keep going back to it, and I hate to keep making the same point. The guards aren't good enough, okay? First of all, Boogie Flan, I was thinking about this. I don't want to criticize the kid, okay? But I go back to when he entered the NBA draft, then withdrew and entered the portal. And at the time, it was, oh, Cal lost his best player to the portal. And I remember saying at the time, I said, if you bring back Boogie Flan, you can't keep Darius Acuff and Malik Thomas and DJ Wagner. And all those guys at that point, months before, had committed to returning. Remember, all those guys put out that video in mid to late April. Boogie Flan doesn't withdraw from the draft until, late May. What is Cal supposed to do? Tell Darius Acuff, hey, it was fun, but your ass got to go to the bench now. Like that was never going to happen. And so I always said, I never understood that narrative that it was some sort of whatever. And I'll say this to Boogie Flan. I like him. I don't love him. Xavier and Lee, it's the same. Listen, Xavier and Lee, I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I'll say this. I don't need to be disrespectful to Xavier and Lee, because all you got to do is search his name on Twitter. And Florida fans, you think Florida fans were mad at Billy Napier at the end? You should see what they're saying about Xavier and Lee, okay? But in a lot of ways, what this reminds me of, you know what it actually does remind me of, is UConn a year ago. UConn coming off the national championship, in their case, back-to-back, no big deal. But two, they go into the portal, and it was, I think to date, really the only real recruiting miss that Dan Hurley has had as head coach of UConn. They go into the portal, they need a guard, they add Aiden Mahaney. I said right away, I was like, he's fine. He's a good shooter. He's a good 7th, 8th man. He's not a starting point guard in the Big East. And UConn got handicapped and handcuffed by that all season long. And so I only bring that up because it's kind of the same with Florida. And I go back to UConn last year. I don't know if Dan would say this publicly, but I think they kind of thought, we're UConn, we'll figure it out, whatever. I'm not saying they cut corners. I'm just saying I think that they thought, put these guys in our system, they're going to be fine. And I think there was a little bit of that with Florida, of Xavier and Lee, and I like Todd Golden. Okay, so this isn't like an anti-Todd Golden thing, but he had comments over the summer about, the advanced metrics say this, and he's going to do, and I was like, he played one game against a power conference team last year, and he wasn't very good. He was playing in the Ivy League. That's a big jump. And so with Florida, I just don't think their guards are that good. As a matter of fact, who I actually think is their best guard is the European kid. The European kid who doesn't seem to play, and I do think, and again, I'm not trying to speak for the team, but that Urban Klavchar kid, every time I watch him, he's good. But I will say, I think Florida is kind of in that weird world that a lot of teams are these days of, you paid a lot of money for a guy or two, and you want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but there are other guys that are better. And do you sit the guy that's getting paid a lot? Do you play the guy that, it's just this weird dynamic. And so I trust Todd Golden. I think he'll figure it out. And listen, for all the criticism, Florida is going to enter SEC play, and it's almost like Kentucky, is that Florida doesn't have any real great wins to speak of. I think the best win I would say is probably against Miami, but it's kind of the same with Kentucky. They're going to enter with 4 or 5 losses, but the SEC is down and it's wide open, and I think they'll figure it out. So with Florida, I don't know what else there is to say. I'm not rooting against anybody. I'm just saying I think there were some misevaluations in the portal. I think there's a ceiling to what they can be this year. Doesn't mean that, again, they won't get in the tournament. Once you get into the tournament, I think you can get hot. But I think they're kind of stuck with two guys that aren't good enough, at least not right now. All right, so what we're going to do, we're going to take one more break. Matt, when we come back, I see you have a couple questions and stuff, a couple comments starred for today's show. So we'll get to some of your questions. Then we'll just wrap on the rest of college hoops. We'll be quick. Michigan may never lose. They may never win by less than 40 the way that they're trending. We'll talk about them. We'll talk a little bit about Indiana, Lamar Wilkerson. We know that name. And Kentucky, Mark Pope finally saying enough is enough. Did a little Dikembe Mutombo finger wag at Brandon Garrison. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, you know what we got to do. We got to thank our friends. We got to thank our partners. We got to go ahead and thank Cauley Puffs and CauleyPuffs.com. Yeah, you see the logo on the back of the screen right here. Okay, so I've told you all about Cauley Puffs, but family-owned company, not far from where I live. Joey, a huge sports fan. And one day he was sitting on the couch and he said, you know what? I need a snack that is both healthy but delicious, something my kids are going to love, something my family's going to love, something I'm going to love. And so he came up with Cauley Puffs. This is the new age health food snack. You don't need to go to the grocery aisle and buy all that crap, the Doritos, the Fritos. No, my friends, you need Cauley Puffs. Baked, not fried, avocado oil, no grease, healthy ingredients. But here's the best part. They taste freaking delicious. Actually, there's another best part. In addition to tasting delicious, in addition to being healthy, they are also taking care of listeners of the Aaron Torres Pod. Okay, so check this out. All you got to do is go to CauleyPuffs.com. That's CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, and you can get 15% off any purchase with the promo code Torres. That's Torres, Torres. It's that simple. 15% off any purchase. 1 bag to try them out, 100 bags to cater a party. Doesn't really matter. Promo code Torres. CauleyPuffs.com gets you 15% off. Cauley Puffs also available on Amazon. You obviously can't get the promo code there, but CauleyPuffs.com, CauleyPuffs.com, promo code Torres gets you 15% off any purchase. Thank you to our friends at Cauley Puffs. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. Final segment of the show. So good to be back. Matt, we're going to go ahead and wrap with a couple questions. And then I want to wrap with the rest of college hoops. Again, we will get back to college football tomorrow. I will be at the Mint, Franklin, Kentucky, Mint Kentucky Downs. Let's get to a couple questions before we get out of here and wrap on a couple other topics. One, Ray Tubes, who's a UConn guy, says, I think Malachi can make a case to start. Listen, we just talked about it with Florida. There are pieces at Florida that are playing better than other pieces, and, there's NIL components. I do think for UConn to reach its full potential, Silas Demery has to reach his full potential. And so you can't just bench him. But I think to your point, Ray, is there the possibility that you could start both of them? I think that's in play. And this is what I'm talking about with UConn, is I think that there are so many layers that we can stack on top of each other with the Huskies. The 2 guard lineup with Demery and Malachi Smith. The 2 big man lineup with Terrace Reed and Eric Ryba. It's just, I think Dan Hurley, I know last year wasn't very fun for him. I think he's going to have fun this year figuring out all the pieces and how they fit together. Any others before we get out of here? Luke says, who had Florida and Kentucky with 4 losses before Christmas on their bingo card? Well, I didn't like Florida. I had, my thoughts on Kentucky are very well known. And I'll tell you what, speaking of which, let's get to the rest of a busy Tuesday in college hoops. I want to wrap with Kentucky because Mark Pope finally said enough is enough. I'm not dealing with your crap, Brandon Garrison. We'll talk about that in a minute. Before we do, just a couple quick scores. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this. Michigan, listen, Michigan beats Villanova. So Villanova entered Tuesday, 7-1 overall. Only loss was to BYU on opening night. I'm not great at math. That means that they had won 7 straight games coming into this game. They were down by 30 at the half against Michigan, and they end up losing by only a final score of 89-61. That is a 28-point margin. Why do I say only? It is because if you have followed Michigan, their last 4 wins by 41 points, 40 points, 30 points, 40 points. That is their last 4 wins. And so Michigan, I don't even know what this stat is, Matt. You're blowing my brains right now. He says it's the first time since at least 95-96 to win 6 straight games by at least 20 points, with at least 2 of those victories over ranked opponents, according to Sport Radar and producer Matt. Matt, you could have made that up. I've never even heard of Sport Radar, but they seem trustworthy to me. Michigan's unbelievable. And listen, a couple things about Michigan. I looked this up because I thought it was interesting. They beat Villanova. You know who was their leading scorer? Elliot Cadeau with 18 points. Why that was interesting to me, Elliot Cadeau was supposed to be the weak spot of this team. I go back to the summer. Remember, I did the remember Pam was the one, Torres, you're going to do a way too early top 25. This was in like June. And or a way too early Final Four. And my Final Four was UConn, stuck with that. That looks good. Kentucky stuck with it into the fall, not so much. BYU kind of bailed on them, probably shouldn't have. And I had Michigan. And I talked myself out of Michigan by the fall because I said, is Elliot Cadeau really that guy? And is he going to be able to do it against the level of competition that he needs? Now, my logic in the summer was that everybody else around him is so good, it probably won't matter. And that's kind of exactly what's happening. So to the stat I was going to get to, Michigan, 6 straight wins over whatever it is, 25 plus points. The last 4 games, okay, they have beaten Villanova, Rutgers, which is a Big 10 opponent. Gonzaga and Auburn were both ranked when they played them. 4 different wins, 4 different leading scorers, okay? And so what stands out to me about this team, they obviously have so many guys that can beat you. They seem to have a group of guys that nobody really cares about, hey, I have to get mine tonight, which is the best thing. And listen, the thing about talking college hoops as much as we do is that at certain points, you're just going to run into stuff where, like, you talk about it enough, teams are going to have good days and bad days. And so I bring it up because I know I said a week ago Arizona's the best team in the country. They may still have the best resume. And they're great. They just destroyed Auburn by 1,000 points. I just don't think you can say anybody is playing better than Michigan right now. I just don't think you can. A 6th straight win by 25 plus points. By the way, they play at Maryland on Friday night, another big Big 10 game, which I think is kind of interesting. They're just so good right now. By the way, I was in Vegas in like May. Should have gotten, I think I could have got them at 30-1 win the national championship. I highly, highly regret that. But Michigan wins. Michigan dominates. Let's stay in the Big 10. Another Big 10 team playing this in a league game. The Indiana Hoosiers. So Indiana coming into this game had lost 2 straight. They lost their Big 10 opener at Minnesota. They then lost to Louisville over the weekend. He kind of sat there and said, kind of need this one. You're at Kentucky on Saturday, whatever. I bring it up because not only did Indiana win, Lamar Wilkerson, goodness freaking gracious. Okay, so Lamar Wilkerson had quite literally one of the craziest stat lines that you will ever see. He finished the game with 44 points overall. He finished the game shooting 16 of 22 from the field, 10 of 15 from behind the three-point arc. He did it in 23 minutes of play. 44 points, 10 three-pointers made, 23 minutes of play. Like, what is that? What are we even talking about? And so an unbelievable performance. Listen, this is why he was so coveted in the portal. Came down to, largely Kentucky and Indiana. You talk about a guy that, Kentucky just needs right now. Guy that can hit 10 threes in a game. Among Mark Pope's bigger whiffs in the portal, I would argue that one is it. But Indiana, man, I was just thinking this, like, after you watch the Woodson stuff through the years with Ballo and Malik Renew and like all these big guys clogging the paint, it does have to be refreshing to just watch this team shooting threes, spacing this and that. Indiana gets the win over Penn State. Finally, by the way, Matt has more stats, maybe from Sports Radar. He says 3 set a single game Indiana record. Yeah, I'm not surprised by that. 10 threes in a game sets an Indiana record. And then to Matt's point, 44 is a single game record for Indiana's Assembly Hall. So you think about all the greats who have played at Assembly Hall. No one has ever had 44 in a game, which is kind of crazy to think about. All right, I do want to wrap one more just game of note, and I think it is kind of noteworthy. Okay, so Kentucky, they haven't been very good, coming off whatever it was, a 30-point loss, 40-point loss to Gonzaga on Friday night in Nashville. It's been bad, right? And we don't need to relitigate. Let me see here what the final score was. Yeah, 35-point loss. We don't need to relitigate what happened against Gonzaga or North Carolina or Michigan State or whatever. They needed a slump buster. They got a slump buster. Final score against NC Central, 103-67. The crazy part was that it was actually pretty close. Like, I was on the plane flipping back and forth with this game in BYU, and like it was maybe like 22-15 when I turned the game on. Like, it wasn't a blowout, but Kentucky gets the win. And I want to be glasses half full, positive vibes only guy to kind of wrap the show here on a Wednesday. First off, let me say this. I did think overall the effort was better. Matt has the stat here. Otega Oweh, 21 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists. I thought it was just the best across the board effort. Now, I'm not saying it's the greatest win ever and the whole season saved and all that. I thought it was the best across the board effort that Kentucky has had all season long in terms of effort and energy. Speaking of energy, like, we got to give credit where it's due. Mark Pope, we've all been calling on him. Dude, are you going to hold your players accountable? Okay. Well, you go back, I want to say it was the middle of the first half. I don't totally remember, but I hate to keep saying it, but I was on the plane and I saw this happen. There was a fast break. Brandon Garrison kind of lets up. And even in real time, I was like, that doesn't really look like he gave it 100%. Pope, boom, calls a timeout. Boom, goes to the sideline. And it's the first time maybe it's happened and I haven't seen it. It is the first time he got very verbal with one of his players. There you go, Matt. Thank you so much for doing this. And to me, what I think, this is just so, I can't emphasize enough how important this is, okay? Because listen, Mark Pope should be who he is. I don't want him to change because the internet says that he's got to be some tough guy, and because he played for Rick Pitino, he's got to act like Rick Pitino. By the way, for people who are watching on YouTube, you can see, we can't show the video again for copyright purposes, but I bring it up because you can see him say to Brandon Garrison, sit down, go sit down, okay? And listen, I don't want him to try to be some knockoff of Rick Pitino because that's not who he is. I think one of the endearing things about him is kind of the positive, upbeat energy. But there's a time and a place to hold everybody accountable, whether it's your child, your husband, your wife, your whatever, grandparents, I don't know. Grandma's acting up, you put her in the corner and make her think about what she's doing. I don't know. But like with Brandon Garrison, he's been an issue. I go back to the Louisville game when Sonata Frew bullied him for 30 minutes. And I said after the Louisville game, he's not giving enough effort. And so all we want to see from Mark Pope was like, hey, that this is not acceptable. Mark Pope always talks about the standard with wearing that uniform, but we haven't seen him actually make the move that shows I am not tolerating this. I am not putting up with it. So Brandon Garrison gets sent to the bench. Brandon Garrison does not play the rest of the game. And I'll tell you this, we shared the segment earlier this morning of Jaden Quayens. I think Jaden Quayens is coming back maybe in limited minutes for the St. John's game. So the next 3 games, Indiana at home on Saturday. Then also on top of that, you have a week off and then St. John's in Atlanta. And then you have Bellarmine before SEC play starts. I think we're going to see limited minutes from Jaden Quayens as soon as the St. John's game. And I think they're going to try to ramp him up a little bit so he can be semi-ready to go for SEC play in January. So I only bring it up because I think there is a very real possibility that Brandon Garrison has played his last significant minutes at the University of Kentucky. Lost his starting spot to Malachi Moreno a few weeks ago. He's played because of necessity. They played Gonzaga the other day, one of the biggest teams in college basketball, but he got benched the second half of this game. Jaden Quayens is coming back. Malachi Moreno, he plays his butt off. Can't criticize him for that. And I think Brandon Garrison has probably played his last couple minutes. I think it's interesting, even going back to the summer, I remember you'd hear these glowing reports about Kentucky in the summertime, the summer workouts. And Jalen Lowe was great, and Denzel Aberdeen was this, and this guy was that. The one guy that it was like hasn't really made the step is Brandon Garrison. And so I don't wish any ill will upon anybody, but these are highly paid athletes now. College players get more money than most of us are going to see in a year, in a month, and a whatever. Got to be held accountable. I give Mark Pope credit. Like I said, needed a slump buster, get a slump buster. Kentucky at 6-4 overall. I think the next two games are really going to kind of define who this team is. Again, the good news is SEC play. The SEC we know is not what it was last year. There are wins to be had, but if you can get one of those two, preferably probably Indiana at Rupp, I think that's a positive sign. By the way, St. John's isn't playing great either, so maybe you can get both of them, but you got to get one, probably the home game, and just get a little bit of momentum going into SEC play. I can say what I want about Mark Pope. I've been critical. Never said he can't coach. Never said he can't whatever. But I do think, we need to see a little fire out of him. And he gave it. And I'm actually, sounds weird. It's not like he's my son or something, but I'm proud of him. Proud of the way he handled that. All right, I'll tell you what. It is what's today, Wednesday? I got to get out of here. I actually got some stuff I got to take care of. Actually, it looks like we got one or two questions. Luke's got an interesting point. He says, if this isn't the year the Big Ten finally wins a natty, it may never happen. Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, all Final Four caliber teams. I agree 100%. I mean, those are three probably top 7-8 teams in the country, and Michigan right now is by far the best. Purdue, I think it'll be interesting too. I think there's about 6 or 7 teams that are really going to be in position for the end of the year to have a number 1 seed, and there's obviously not great at math. There's only 4 of them, right? We talked about UConn. I think Duke is probably going to be in position based on what they've done. Same with Michigan. Purdue, Iowa State, they just played each other. What does that mean? Maybe Houston gets in the mix, so I think that'll be interesting. But he's right. Luke is right, as always. Big Ten needs to win an Natty this year, especially, by the way, the Final Four is in Indy, which helps as well. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. If you are not subscribed, Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel, do me a quick favor. Make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you get your podcasts, make sure that you are subscribed. Rate and review the show. Go ahead, give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. Make sure you're following on social media at Aaron_Torres on Twitter, at Aaron Torres Pod here on YouTube. And other than that, we are going to go ahead and get out of here. Thank you for your support. We will be back. Probably the assumption is Thursday from the Mint Kentucky Downs in Franklin, Kentucky.